Come on, I need a little bit more than that today. All right, you guys good? Yeah, there we go. It is a joy and an honor and a pleasure to be one church, multiple locations today. So wherever you find yourself today, we are glad to have you with us. We talked earlier today about Vacation Bible School. I want to tell one quick story about Vacation Bible School, then we'll jump into the text. I was at Shadow Lake on Thursday night, and I got a chance to meet a 6-year-old boy there, a 6-year-old kid, and he had heard about the mission that we were raising money for, that we were raising money to give clean water filtration system in Belize, and so he decided, you know what, I'm gonna make a lemonade stand. And he is an entrepreneur in the greatest facet. He's a 6-year-old and said most people would put a lemonade stand at their house and just kind of hope people would walk by or see it and come. And this guy was like, no. I'm going to a trailhead here in the Omaha area. So he went to a trailhead where there's bikers and runners and people walking dogs all over. And he was there for an hour and a half and he made $159. Isn't that awesome? Thought that was great that this little boy just took on the vision of, hey, we want to make sure Jesus is known all over the world. And one of the ways he can be known all over the world is clean drinking water. And so he said, I'm going to go and do this. He was asked by his grandma, how much do you want to keep? And he said, I want to keep $0. I started with nothing. I don't need anything. I don't want anything. So he gave all $159 to that water filtration system. So super excited about that. But that's what it's all about, right? That's what everything is all about. Was we've been in this series called 52, as we've been looking at the life of Jesus and the ministry of Jesus and the teachings of Jesus. As we've been in this series, what we find is how great it is to want to tell the stories of Jesus. And today is no different. Today is an incredible story. So if you have your Bible, go ahead and open up to John chapter 5. John chapter 5 is where we're going to be. And I want to tell you right up front, this story in the Bible is like top 5 for me. I love this story because it's a story where Jesus asks a question. And I'll be honest, if we would be honest about this question in our own life, if we would be honest about how we answer the question Jesus asked in John chapter 5, I believe that it can change a lot for a lot of us. That we might be sitting by the pool side, as we're going to see here in a second, of complacency or spirituality, or maybe it's our health thing, or maybe it's an emotional thing, and we might be sitting by the pool waiting and hoping for a moment, and the moment is going to come right in front of us today. I believe today Jesus is going to ask you this question. Ready for the question? Yes. Let's do it. John chapter 5, starting in verse 1, says this. Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now there in Jerusalem, near a sheep gate, was a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, which is surrounded by 5 colored colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, and the paralyzed. So let me set this up for you so you can kind of understand what's happening. It says sometime later, Jesus goes to this pool. Now, you ask the question, well, what is this pool? This pool is actually this pool in Bethesda. We actually have a picture of this pool, modern day. This is the picture of the pool. And this pool was actually a paganist pool. It wasn't part of the Jewish tradition. It was more paganist, meaning this, they were worshiping one of the Greek gods, the Greek god called Asclepius. Everybody say Asclepius? That's my best guess of how to say that word, okay? So say it again, Asclepius. You're going to learn something today. Asclepius was the Greek god of medicine and of healing. And in Greek mythology, it's believed that he would bring healing. Now, the way that he brought healing, here it is. The way that he brought healing was that they believed that the water would be stirred by an angel. And every time the water was stirred by an angel, the first person in the water, the first person to get in the water of the lame and the blind and the deaf and the mute, and all these people are sitting by the pool, the first person to get in the pool when the water is stirred gets healed. That's what they believed, that this Greek god would actually stir the water, send angels to stir the water, and they're all sitting there waiting and hoping and anticipating that when the water's stirred, that they're the first person in the water. Now, some of you know my sense of humor. Some of you know that sometimes I can go just a little too far. And so when I read this text, there's a part of me that has a lot of questions. A lot of questions. For instance, were there any practical jokers in this day and age, right? Because here's what I would do, and you can send all emails to rusty.miller@calvary.ch, that's fine. But here's what I would do, okay? And you can judge me all you want, and that's fine. But here's what I would do, because I'm kind of a joker. I would walk behind the blind guys. And I would whisper to the blind guys, the water got stirred, just to watch them jump in. Again, you can judge me all you want. That's just what I would do that because I would just have some fun. I would just see what happens when all these people just jump in the water. Because you know when they jump in the water, other people are like, man, I must have missed it. And then they jump in the water. Here's my second question, and this is probably a little bit worse. I'm giving you a heads up so you can know where to send those emails. But here's the question. When the lame guys fall in the water or roll in the water because they can't swim, they can't walk, they can't do it, when they go in the water, who helps them out of the water? It's a real question. Like, what happens when they go in the water? Like, what happens to those people if they're second? Because they're not healed. They're just now wet and in the water. These are the questions I have. So when I read this text, I oftentimes will go to just some weird thoughts in my head. And the rules of this pool in Bethesda are very, very simple. First come, first serve. The rules in the pool of Bethesda are all about me and nobody else. Because the moment the water's stirred, I'm getting in the water. Everybody's got a lottery ticket hoping that today is the day that their number is going to get called. And perhaps there were some people that went in the water second and they just went home wet. They didn't go home healed. And you can imagine the chaos, can't you? The moment the water's stirred. You can imagine the chaos of all of these people trying to get in the pool as fast as they possibly can. And you might see this pool and go, man, this pool must be like a pool that's on a cruise ship or on an all-inclusive resort. No, this pool would have looked and smelled like death. There would have been people all around it. There's not umbrella drinks. It is absolutely nasty. It's where they would have washed sheep before they took the sheep for slaughter. That's what this is. It's a nasty, nasty pool. And everybody's just sitting, waiting, watching, hoping that today is the day. Did you catch verse 3? It says a great number of people are there. We don't know how many. We don't know if it's 100. We don't know if it's 50. We don't know if it's 1,000. We don't know if it's 12. It's just a great number of people there. See, misery loves company. Don't we? We love to congregate around our misery together. We love to congregate around all of our issues and our problems and our hurts and our habits, and we like to congregate around those things, and this is no different. All these people are congregating around this pool, waiting and hoping that today would be the day that the water stirred so they could be the first one in, that they might be healed. So Jesus is there. And you would expect that when Jesus is there, he walks up, sees all these people, he's like, you're all healed, just keep going, just move on. That's not what happens. Check it out, verse 5. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. Now, the Bible's not clear about how often this takes place. The Bible is not clear about how many people are there, but the Bible is very clear about how long this guy has been in this condition. How long is it, church? 38 years. 13,870 days this man has been in this condition. And what that means is he can't move his legs, he can't move his arms. He's an invalid. He's an invalid. And you got to imagine that every single time he's taken to this pool, every single time someone has to carry him on a mat and put him down at the pool, he's laying there and he's just watching the pool day after day after day, minute after minute, hoping and praying that today's the day. The Bible calls him an invalid. I find that a very interesting term in the English language, because I believe it describes his physical condition, but also probably his spiritual condition as well. And I wonder if this invalid has felt invalid. He's been invalid for 38 years. That for 38 years, he's been an outcast. For 38 years, he's been in pain. For 38 years, he's not been able to do anything. For 38 years, he can't walk. And for 38 years, he goes through what we would call Groundhog Day, day after day after day, hoping and waiting that today might be the day he gets in the water first. And Jesus shows up on the scene. And check out what happens in verse 6. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, do you want to get well? I love this story. Jesus sees him and he hears about his condition. And then Jesus asks him a question. Did you hear the question? Do you want to get well? I lead a Bible study on Tuesdays at 2:00. With a group of guys who are kind of far from Jesus. We're kind of trying to figure out who Jesus is. And so we do this Bible study every week where what we'll do is I'll open up a gospel story. We'll read the gospel story. I'll have them retell the gospel story to me. We work through it that way. And then I ask them, what is one thing you learned about Jesus in this story? Well, a couple weeks ago, we did this story, John chapter 5, because I told you earlier, this is one of my favorite texts, and I always love telling this story because I love hearing what other people think of Jesus in this story, especially people who are far from Jesus or are trying to figure out or navigate who Jesus is. And I won't tell you everything they said because I couldn't stand on the stage and tell you everything they said, but I will tell you that they thought that this question that Jesus asked was completely and totally insensitive. Just absolutely irrational for Jesus to ask this question. And maybe that's how you feel today as well. Why would Jesus ask this question? This man, obviously, he wants to get well. Obviously, he does. He's been in this condition for 38 years. For 38 years, he's watched the pool. For 38 years, he's hoped he's next. For 38 years, he's wanted to get in the pool. But the question is a good question. And here's why. Because beggars in this day and age, beggars in Israel would have made a lot of money just simply begging. And if his condition changes, he's gonna have to get a real job. And so Jesus just leans in. He says, are you sure, Mr. Invalid? Are you sure, Mr. Invalid? Are you sure you want to get well? Because here's what Jesus is asking. He's inquiring about what this man really wants. What is it you really want? Do you want to get well? Do you want to be whole? What is it you really want? Because if he gets well, if he gets whole, if he can walk, he's gonna have to change how he's previously lived for the last 38 years. See, what I know about you and what I know about me is that we all want things to be different, don't we? We all want to be well, but what I found for myself, and I'll just speak for myself, I envision myself in a better place later. I want to be greater later. And the biggest thing keeping me from that life is my own comfort. And maybe that's for you as well. That the thing keeping you from following what Jesus has in store for you, to be well spiritually, to be well emotionally, to be well physically, to be well in whatever facet you might fill in the blank today, the thing that keeps us from doing that is our own comfort. See, I get to sit across from a lot of people. It's part of my job is I just get to invite people into my office or invite people out to coffee or to lunch and just ask them their hopes and their dreams and their desires and how they're doing following Jesus. And they get to ask me the same questions. And that's what I love about my job. And I love the relational aspect of that. But as I do that, what I find, and it's true in my life as well, what I find is the thing that keeps us from those hopes and those goals and those desires is our own comfort. Or I have to sit across from somebody and they say, you mean I can't text her anymore? No, you probably shouldn't text her any longer. You're a married man and you're not married to her, so you should probably stop texting her. Maybe if you want to text somebody, maybe text your wife, right? Like that's just a simple one. You mean I can't eat out every day? Not if you want to save money, you can't. You mean I gotta stop hanging out with them? If you want to break the addiction, maybe stop hanging out with the people who are feeding the addiction. You plus them equals bad math. Just stop doing it, right? You mean I gotta get up early? Well, probably. Or just manage your time better. See, these are the things where our comfort gets in the way of what we have or what God has in store for us. And so Jesus leans into this man's life and says, do you want to get well? Because you look pretty comfortable. You look pretty comfortable on the mat. And I believe that if we're truly honest today, church, we look pretty comfortable too. Maybe it's spiritually. That maybe we've been in the same place with Jesus for 38 years. 10 years, 5 years. And we've yet to take a step of faith, another step of faith, since that first step of faith. And we're pretty comfortable lying on the mat of our own spirituality. Or maybe we're pretty comfortable lying on the mat of unforgiveness, or lying on the mat of bitterness, or lying on the mat of shame, or lying on the mat of anger, or lying on the mat of guilt, or lying on the mat of blame or addiction, and we look really comfortable just staying on the mat. And so Jesus comes into this man's life, and he comes into our life today, and he says, do you want to get well? It's a great question. It's a great question, but the second question is, do you even know you need to get well? Do you know you even need to get well? You ever met an angry person who doesn't know they're angry? You know what I'm talking about? Where you start to have a conversation with them and they're just escalating and you're like, hey, you need to calm down. Like, I'm calm. I'm super calm. And you're like, you're not calm. There's nothing calm about what is happening right here. They're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm calm, right? I think for a lot of us, that's the way we live our life. That we're on this mat of bitterness or on this mat of anger, or on this mat of sinfulness or on this mat of addiction, and we don't even know that we're still on the mat. I said this a few weeks ago and I still believe it's true. God can't heal what we pretend isn't broken. So if we're gonna get to a place where we're actually gonna be honest, if we're gonna get to a place where we're actually gonna be real with this question that Jesus asks, do you want to get well? It means that we're gonna have to change. Because if you don't wanna get well, you just keep doing what you're doing. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. If we don't wanna get well, we'll just live life the way we're living life. But if you wanna get well, it means you're gonna have to take a step of faith and do something different. And so Jesus comes to this man, leans over into his life. He's been there for 38 years. And Jesus says, do you want to get well? Verse 7, sir. Jesus has never been called sir in his life. He doesn't know who he's talking to. He says, sir, the invalid replied, I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me. It's interesting, isn't it? That after 38 years of living a life that is completely and totally invalid, for 38 years he's been an outcast, for 38 years he's got pain, for 38 years he's all alone. And he never tells Jesus about his condition. When you get to the bottom of what this man is looking for, he's looking for someone to help him. That's what he's looking for. Notice his excuse. His excuse isn't, Jesus, I can't move my legs. It's not his excuse. His excuse is, I've got no one. Sir, I've got no one to help me get into the pool. He believes a pool and a person can do something for him. He believes that a pool and a person can change his perspective, can change his life, can change his circumstance. He believes a pool and a person can do something that only Jesus can do for him. See, here's the truth, church. We all have pools. Every single one of us has pools that we're looking into thinking, if I just do that, I'll be successful. If I just do that, everything's gonna change for me. If I can just do that, it's gonna be great. I'll be better, I'll be whole. If I can just get a promotion at work, then everything's gonna be fine. If I can just make more money, then everything's gonna be fine. If I can just get out of debt, then everything can be fine. If I could just get married, everything would be fine. If I could just be unmarried, everything would be fine. If I get that house, if I could have more friends, if I could gain 10 pounds or lose 10 pounds, and we play this game over and over and over again, where we look at this pool and think, if I could just get in that pool, things will be better for me. Here's the truth, church. There will always be another pool. There will always be another one. Just when we think we've arrived at one, there's always gonna be another one. And this man is on the side of a pool looking for hope, and hope is right in front of him. And hope is looking at him and saying, if you wanna get well, I'm the one who can make you well. I can make you well. I can change your identity. Your identity is this lame man who's sitting by the pool waiting and hoping, and I can change your identity. See, if you flip through the Bible, if you flip through the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, what you find is that Jesus is oftentimes changing people's identity. We might not know their name, but we know their circumstance, and we know that Jesus can change their circumstance. He changes their identity into who he is. Look at Luke chapter 8. There's a woman with a blood issue in Luke chapter 8. We don't know her name, we know her condition, and we know that Jesus solves it. In John chapter 4, there's a Samaritan woman. We don't know her name, but we know her issue, and Jesus solves it. In John chapter 8, there's a woman caught in adultery. We don't know her name, we know her issue, and Jesus solves it. John chapter 9, we're gonna look at it next week, the man born blind. We don't know his name, we know his condition, and Jesus solves it. Mark 5, the demon-possessed man, the leper in Mark 1, the deaf and the mute man. We don't know their names, but we know their condition, and we know that Jesus solves it. Jesus is in the business of looking at all of how we might identify ourselves, how we might look at ourselves. He's in the business of looking at that and saying, let me solve that for you. Do you want to get well? And this man, he just keeps giving excuse after excuse, doesn't he? No one helps me. Here I am, I'm all alone. I'm just sitting by the pool, just waiting. Someone takes my turn just when I think it's my turn. I called dibs yesterday and somebody else took it. And here I am, I'm all alone and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. Jesus gets tired of the excuses. Check out what Jesus says to him in verse 8. And Jesus said to him, get up. Pick up your mat and walk. This is the part where the story gets really funny to me. Because this man just gave excuse after excuse. He doesn't say yes or no. He doesn't check a box, yes or no. He doesn't say, I want to get well or I don't want to get well. He just gives excuses to Jesus. That's all he does. Excuse after excuse after excuse after excuse. And then Jesus is like, all right then, pick up your mat and walk. For 38 years, this guy has not been able to walk. For 38 years, he's not been able to walk. For 30 years, he probably hasn't tried to walk because he can't walk. And then all of a sudden, this dude shows up, looks at him and says, you even want to get well? The guy gives excuse and he goes, okay then, walk. You ever seen that meme where there's the guy and he's got a stick and he's poking him, he's like, do something. That's what I see when I see this text. I see Jesus going like, all right, walk, right? Verse 9. At once, the man was cured, and he picked up his mat, and he walked. Jesus shows up at the pool party and tells this guy, you don't need a pool. You don't need a pool. And we don't either. We might think the pool of promotion is gonna solve it for us. The pool of a relationship is gonna solve it for us. The pool of debt and getting out of debt is gonna solve it for us. The pool of losing weight is gonna solve it. We look at all these pools and we think if only that would solve it for us. We can't look at a pool and expect it to do what only Jesus can do for us. Do you wanna get well? Because if you wanna get well, you need to do what this man does. Surrender your life to Jesus and do what he tells you to do. If you don't wanna get well, just keep living as you're living. But check out what he says to this guy. Pick up your mat. That thing that has been carrying you, I want you to carry it. What an image, right? The thing that has been carrying you to this point that you've lived on, I want you to carry it. How true could that be for some of us today? The thing that's been carrying us. Maybe it's an addiction. Maybe it's shame of our past or pain of our past. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's burden. Maybe it's a health thing. That thing that's been carrying us day after day after day, Jesus leans in and says, no, you carry it. And I'm gonna give you the power to carry it. Pick up your mat and walk. At once, the man was cured. He picked up his mat and he walked. The day on which this took place was oh no, what's that word, church? Sabbath. Jesus, when are you gonna learn? And so the Jewish leaders said to the man who had healed him, it's the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry a mat on Sabbath. Guys, this is hilarious. And maybe you don't understand this, and I'll explain, all right? These guys followed these laws, okay? And inside these laws, there were 613 commandments that included 248 positive commandments. These are things you can do. And there were also 365 negative things. These are things you can't do. 365 is one for every day of the year, right? And inside those 365, there's 39 that came around the Sabbath. These are things you cannot do on the Sabbath. I just want to give you a few of these, okay? You ready for a couple of these? Number 11, cooking. You cannot cook on the Sabbath. I've got a son who requires, this is what he will tell you, I require a home-cooked meal 3 times a day. That's what he requires. Someday he's gonna marry up and he's gonna marry a lady who loves to cook. And so there's that. But on the Sabbath, he just couldn't eat because he won't eat leftovers. He will not, I'm raising him, yes. He won't eat leftovers. He won't eat a cold sandwich. He will only eat a home-cooked meal every single day. So on the Sabbath, he would just be out of luck. He just could not eat on the Sabbath. How about this one? Number 16, spinning. And you say, well, that's not that big a deal. I can tell you this right now, that we've got kids in our kids ministry at any one of our locations right now that are breaking this rule on Sabbath right now. Guaranteed. They're just like, woohoo, woohoo. They're just spinning around. They're just happening. And the reason they're doing that is because we gave them way too much candy during Vacation Bible School. So they're just spinning all over the place, all right? What about this one? Number 30, scoring. NFL Sunday tickets out, guys. There is no football on the Sabbath, none. Like imagine that. Imagine life with no football. What about this one? Number 32, erasing. Not that big a deal, except for when you see number 33, writing. I don't know. How about this one? Number 37, igniting a fire. Okay, that's probably okay. We should probably not ignite a fire until you see number 38, extinguishing a fire. How about this one? Number 39, it's the last one. Transferring between domains. Well, what's that? It's carrying a mat. Our guy got caught on number 39. And he is breaking rules. Don't miss that. He is breaking the rule. He is carrying a mat. He is transferring between domains on the Sabbath. But what blows my mind is that nobody stopped to notice that for the first time in 38 years, our boy could break a rule. For the first time in 38 years, he can carry a mat. And if I'm that guy, I'm walking around with a mat underneath my arm going like, guys, I can carry a mat. Oh, and guess what? I can also walk. 38 years. And these guys are too busy mat tracking to notice. They missed the miracle. And check out his response in verse 11. I love it. But he replied, the man who made me well said, pick up your mat and walk. Don't blame me. Don't shoot the messenger. I just did what some guy told me to do. He came to me. He asked me if I wanted to get well. I didn't answer him. I just gave him some excuses. And he poked me and he said, get up and walk. And so I did. So if you got a problem, your problem's with him, not me. So they asked him, who is this fellow who told you to pick up your mat and walk? The man who had got healed had no idea who it was, for Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. I love this. It's like, well, who did this for you then? He was right. Snap, I don't see him anywhere. Later, Jesus found him again at the temple and said to him, see, you're well again. Stop sinning, or something worse may happen to you. Jesus found this man twice. Don't miss that. And I love that he met him at the pool before he found him at the temple. And that should give hope for any single person in any of our locations today who've been looking for something at a pool, trying to find significance at some pool, the significance of money, significance of fame, significance of hope, significance of dropping that addiction, significance of whatever that might be, where you're staring at this pool, hoping that your identity could be changed by this pool. I want you to hear me say this loud and clear today. Jesus is searching for you today. And I hope that he finds you today and asks you this question. Do you want to get well? Because I think that for many of us, we've been an invalid, maybe spiritually, for a long time. That maybe we put our faith and our trust in Jesus a long time ago, and we've never really put another step of faith towards him since. And my hope is that today, as he leans into you and says, hey, do you want to get well spiritually? Do you want to trust me more than you've trusted me before? Today's the day. Today's the day to say, yes, Jesus, I want to. Maybe you're here today, one of our locations today, and emotionally, you're not well. You've got all sorts of doubt, all sorts of fear, all sorts of anxiety, and Jesus wants to come to you today and say, do you want to get well? Because I can make you well. I can do something about the situation, the circumstance that you find yourself in today. Maybe it's a physical thing. I want you to know that I believe in a God who heals. And even if he doesn't, I believe in a God who can be glorified through what you're going through. Met a family a couple weeks ago, in Indiana, that had a kid who'd just been diagnosed with cancer. He was 12 years old. He had been diagnosed the day before I met them and their family. And they said, hey, would you just pray for us? And I said, what specifically would you like me to pray for your family? And I said, one, healing, obviously. But two, if he's not healed, just pray that God would be glorified through this. I thought, what a step of faith from this family that I literally just met in that moment. To say, I just want God glorified through what my son's going through what our kid is going through. Church, it's not lost on me that across all of our campuses today, we've got a lot of people who are hurting emotionally and physically and spiritually today. And I just want you to know that I believe in a God who can heal. That's who I believe. I believe in a God who is able and capable of healing. And it's really easy to say, well, what if he doesn't heal me? What if he does? Why not ask him? Why not go before him and say, God, would you do something about the situation that I find myself in spiritually, emotionally, physically? Because I believe in a God who's able and capable of doing it. And even if he doesn't, he's faithful. So here's how we're going to end today. I'm going to pray. And then at each of our locations today, I want to give you an opportunity to pray with someone. So at each of our locations today, there will be somebody near the baptistry. I would love to pray with you. If you're here today and you just want someone to pray with you, there's nothing special about our prayers other than the fact that we got a special God that hears them. But if you want someone to pray with you today, we're gonna have somebody at all of our locations near the baptistry who would love to pray with you today. That you might answer the question that Jesus has for you. Do you wanna get well? You might say yes, spiritually, physically, emotionally, whatever that might be for you. So at all of our locations, why don't we stand? I wanna pray, and then I'm gonna give a couple announcements as we close. God, I thank you for today. I thank you for just the opportunity we have today to answer the question, do you want to get well? God, it's my prayer that the answer to that question would be yes, we want to get well. Spiritually, emotionally, physically. That we might not look at the pool of anything else, thinking that it might solve the thing that is a barrier to you. But instead, we might look to you for all of our answers, because you have all the answers. And you ask some great questions, especially this one. Do you want to get well? And so God, today we come humbly, and And we answer that question with open hands and open hearts towards you. God, we love you and we thank you. In your name we pray. Amen.